Welcome to Baseball and Coffee, episode 20. 20. It's kind of crazy. Actually, Malia, my daughter, turns 20 today, which is also crazy to think about. And this is totally impromptu, unplanned, but I just learned that she won St. Martin's University Female Athlete of the Year,
Wow, that's amazing.
which is pretty darn cool.
That's awesome.
She led the team in every offensive statistic as a sophomore, as a 5'2" sophomore, which is pretty cool. I just read the number 20 and it made me think of that. So happy birthday, Malia, and congratulations. What's going on, Aaron?
That's awesome. Good. Bright and bushy tail. I've been off for 3.5, 4 days in a row. So I'm remarkably conscious.
Awesome.
It's a sunny day, so it's good.
Right on, man. You go back tomorrow?
I do. Yep. Back to the grind, as it were. Then I have a little time off next week, and then I have a couple weeks, and then I have time off for Laura's birthday at the end of the month, as well as Jackson's graduation. So
nice. Busy.
Cool. So I don't have just a few full work weeks in May, so that's going to be nice.
That's a good thing.
Yes, it is.
So we're going to cover today a little TGFBI update. We'll have a little conversation about what's gone on in our Fantrax league over the course of the last week or so. I'll talk about some waiver wire targets that everyone can be looking at, and then cover a couple of Major League Baseball topics before we wrap it up with open forum. You got any coffee thoughts?
As I reflected on what I wanted to share today, on what I've been enjoying coffee-wise, this is more of a personal nature than it is coffee aficionado or coffee enjoyer, but I just forgot how much I enjoy sharing coffee with Laura because I haven't been home this many days in a while. So I've just been grateful that usually I'm the one who's up first. So usually I'll bring coffee back up to her, but yeah, I'm just really thankful to have someone to share it with. And I'm also thankful that she really loves coffee and we can share that because we both just love it. So that's been the warmest thing with coffee of me lately, just being able to share it, because I'm used to making it for myself at night and so I have like a little cup, but it's not the same as like starting your day together with that coffee. So that's I also wrote down, I wondered if you made a Chemex because somebody talked about last time you were thinking about doing that. So
I have not gone down the Chemex road or the V60 road yet. I'm actually a little bit nervous about it. And I need to find the right kettle to be able to work with. I used to have can't I remember what it's called? It's the kettle that with the push button digital that everybody has, that's electric and has a gooseneck. So I used to have one of those. I don't have it anymore.
Mario, is it?
No,
That's a scale. That's a scale.
It was like there was some sort of fundraiser thing for it to get the whole program started, but then it became super popular. Anyways, I have not done that yet. I was just going to say that I agree with you that, coffee is, for me, is a way to wake me up and kind of it's like a meal almost when it's alone, and when it's, with someone, it's a much more, a different experience. And so I completely agree and understand. I think that's one thing about coffee or food we don't talk about enough. Yeah, it's part of the reason why I think I continue to focus on coffee or have it be such a big part of my life. Is it something to share with others?
Yeah.
Cool. Right on.
And honestly, that's even with my dad. My dad and I's relationship, it's fine. It has up and downs, but I started drinking coffee because of him. And so there's a certain connection. That's a sharing that we still have. And then now I have with Amelia, my daughter really loves coffee. And so you have those people, it's just a way to connect sort of how baseball is, as well as coffee for both of us and between us as well. But it's just one of those things that just creates connections. So I
love it. That's awesome. So TGFBI, last time I looked, we were in 6th. I believe we remain in 6th place.
I was doing prep this morning. We were in 5th.
Looks like we're tied for 5th now.
Yeah, so between David Peralta hitting a home run yesterday and Dylan Cease's outing, I'm sure that helped us in both. But yeah, I looked this morning and it showed us top 5 in our league and then top 100 in the overall.
Super cool.
Yeah, so last week we were number 6 in hitting and number 3 in pitching.
Mhm.
So it was good to see a solid week, and got Acuna back in the fold now. So those runs and RBIs and home runs and things that he's going to be a boon to. I feel good about where we are hitting wise.
Don't forget the steals.
Yeah, I mean, J-Rod's just basically stealing that up for himself. Kind of forgot about it. I think we have like a 3-steal lead right now. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I can't believe, like, the goal is to be competitive in steals, and we're like running away with it right now.
Well, who knew with him? Because he was, what was his, I think his Fangraphs speed was 55, I want to say. But he's become, I guess he went to some sort of off-season program that helped him change the way that he runs, his gait. And all of a sudden he's the top 3, top 5 fastest player in baseball. I'm going to look up the Fangraphs speed tool real quick. But yeah, it's been a huge surprise. Both TGFBI and for me in our house league, I just never would have thought. I thought maybe 15 steals, maybe 20 steals at his peak, but he got caught yesterday, I think, for the first time.
Yeah, I was gonna say I got caught yesterday for the first time, but 9 and 10 is not too bad.
Not
That's not gonna slow you down.
not too bad at all. So we are pretty high up in pitching in TGFBI, and our hitting needs a little bit of work. What kinds of would have been your impressions thus far?
Yeah, I think first base has been a problem with Lotto struggling. Looking at our last week transactions, we both were alignment that we wanted to go after Castanera, partly to look at a corner position, potentially platooning him with Ruff, but then also just thinking long term, if Otto doesn't get his feet under him, like having another first base option on the bench. I'll continue to be, for me, I think, front of mind and looking at corner first base as an area of potential improvement. And then also just being mindful of, is there talent coming back through either someone who's been underperformed and cut, prospect who's coming up, or someone who is injured and coming back, trying to stay ahead of the breaking wave on that and making sure that we are being assertive and trying to get those guys before they come back to see where we can improve. But I feel really good outside of the corner position. And then I think we can also have the opportunity to continue to mine catchers for that catcher 2 spot. We did not win the bid on MJ Melendez. I tried to get him this weekend.
What was the winning bid?
Let's take a look. And then we also put Campusano on our list, which I did not drop Cons for him just because the Jays had a 7-game week. And I was uncertain how I wanted to see more how they're going to use Campusano. But I like his talent. So let's see here. Where are you? He was the 3rd highest bid. He went for $76.
Wow.
Yeah, which was, I thought, pretty assertive. And they dropped Kyle Raleigh to pick him up. Yeah, and we were the 2nd place bid, but our bid was 36.
Okay, I think that's a pretty fair. 36 is a pretty fair bid. If somebody really wanted him that bad, then you can have him. As much as I love MJ Melendez, I think that's a little bit rich for this year, given that we don't really know if he doesn't have a path to playing time as of right now necessarily. Any thoughts on what's going on with Votto? His StatCast page is pretty ugly. He's got his max exit is still there and his walks are still there, but everything else is blue. His average exit is 18th percentile. His hard hit is 10th. XBA is 3rd percentile, and X slug is 4th. So he's not hitting the ball hard at all. He's not seeing it. I don't know if he's changed his swing path. But there's something really horrible going on with his swing right now. Do you trust that he'll be able to come back, and have you dug into his swing at all?
I read a pretty extensive article on Fangraphs this morning, just outlining how many breaking pitches he's seeing, as well as some of the changes he made with his bat. He changed his bat in spring, and had good success with it. And I think a week or so ago, he went back to his old bat. Nothing has really changed as of yet. But he was pretty forthright. He's not, I feel like he's seeing the ball well, but he's just not able to be on time. He's seeing a lot of breaking pitches, and he's swinging more of them than he
It's
ever had.
32. So far, he's seen 34.2% breaking pitches versus 26.7% last year. So it's a 7.5% increase in breaking pitches. Now he's seeing fewer off speed than last year. So, the increase hasn't been in fastballs. It's been simply breaking pitches for off speed pitches. But you're right. He's hitting 133 against breaking pitches thus far this year. And his XBA is 120. So it's even worse. My own opinion is that, he has such a long track record, obviously, of being a really great hitter and being a cerebral hitter who's able to figure things out eventually. And so he's not a cut candidate as much as, if we had a corner infielder to take his starting spot, I think that, we'd be in a better place to be able to put him on the bench and let him figure it out and then put him back in the lineup. But as of right now, that's not really a luxury that we have. We've got Machado at third, and then our corner infielder in our current starting lineup is Keston Hiura. It would help a lot if Andrew Vaughn actually had first base eligibility, which he doesn't. That'd be a huge boon for us.
Yes.
And then Darren Ruff, who I know you cut in our house league, and he remains, kind of hitting high in that Giants lineup. I actually have a bit more confidence in him coming back than I think you do, but those are our options. And so are those better options than, is it better to start Ruff and Hiura and not start Votto, or to ride it out with Votto and hope for the best?
Yeah. Yeah, I want to believe in the track record as well. I think the big chip against that is age. Age eventually will win out, and so how much of what we're seeing is just early season adjustment to maybe the way pitchers adjusting to his changed in approach last year. He really crushed fastballs last year. He did change his approach last year to swing more in the zone, and now they're taking advantage of that. So, how much of what we're seeing again is the pitchers are adjusting back to him and his inability to adjust to it so far, and how much of it is just maybe his bat speed is just a tick down, and his reaction is just a tick down just because he's another year older.
It's fascinating because he never hit, or not never, last year he didn't hit breaking or off-speed pitches very well either. His average against breaking pitches last year was 230. Now he slugged 476, but obviously, I think if you're just looking at it at this top rudimentary level, it says, get to counts where you can throw breaking pitches to him, because if you can throw him for strikes, he's not necessarily going to cause any damage. He hit 306 with a 678 slug against fastballs last year. So he was hunting fastballs, right? And he had a good enough eye to kind of spit on the breaking pitches. I think that's what he'll probably end up doing again, I assume, is if he can recognize the breaking or off-speed pitch out of the pitcher's hand, that he just doesn't bother swinging.
Yeah,
it's pretty clear he can't hit it. But we'll see. I don't know. I'm pretty surprised. I expected him to perform maybe not quite at the level he did last year, but maybe 90% of what he did last year. And he's obviously nowhere close to it yet. I do think we should mention our pitching in TGFBI. So we have our starters are Aaron Nola, Dylan Cease, Justin Verlander, Logan Gilbert, and then currently we also have Tyler Anderson in our lineup, and then we have Marcus Stroman on the bench this week because he's pitching against the Dodgers at Wrigley Field on, I believe it's Saturday. Now, real quickly, we took Nola in the 4th round, I believe. Is that right?
Yes.
And Nola is, I think, starting to, I don't know if he'll ever pitch up to his peripheral statistics 100%, but getting close to that is obviously still kind of a top 5, top 10 National League pitcher and a top 20 pitcher overall, maybe better. The one I'm most, so Justin Verlander was not that much of a roll of the dice. You knew if he was healthy, he was going to be good. Logan Gilbert, I think because of our exposure to the Mariners, gave us a little more insight into Gilbert taking that next step. I didn't have knowledge, or we didn't have knowledge of him changing the velocity and the shape of his slider, which has been a large part of his success, but we did know that his fastball was really great and he plays in a big park. But the one I'm most proud of, I think we're most proud of, is Dylan Cease.
Yeah.
Cease was a favorite of some fantasy baseball folks in the offseason, but we both did extensive work in examining Cease. And what I remember is him having a 40% whiff rate, 40% plus whiff rate on 3 different pitches. And that was what stood out to both of us. So we prioritized him and picked him in the 5th round, which I think is much higher than the majority of folks would have picked him. And we're reaping the rewards for a lot of that research. So that's the one that every time I watch him pitch, I'm quite proud of the fact that we prioritized him in the way that we did.
Yeah, I agree, because you could certainly find an opinion both ways, but ultimately we looked at like what did we value, and we thought he was worth it. And we also thought that we had, skills in terms of ratio protection where we could absorb maybe a potential occasional game where he doesn't have his command or something like that, and he wouldn't crush us. And that's bore out as well. Our ratios are very strong. Our strikeouts, which is attributable partly to him, and we're getting contributions for everyone. We're really in a great position with strikeouts, which I'm really encouraged to see, because I think Verlander is going to get better and better. So I'm encouraged where we are, and just seem to continue to refine back into the bullpen. This week we won the bid for Barlow, which I was happy to see. Got him for less than, like last week 3 different closers went, and we got him for less than all 3 of those guys. So if like the market's a little more reasonable. We didn't start him this week because he has the 5 being weak and their matchups are not good. But I definitely feel like having another closer is something that we need. I feel good about that. And then also Helsley got a save, which is his first one. So we'll see what kind of situation St. Louis uses going forward. But
let me ask you, like, that's the hot topic right now is Helsley versus Gallegos. And Helsley threw, what was it, 102.5 or something like that mile-an-hour pitch this week.
Yeah,
something in that range. His stuff has been incredible this year. I really looked at him in the offseason and saw really great velocity. It wasn't quite that high. It was high 90s.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the St. Louis manager, what are you doing? Right. So you've got this traditional sort of flame throwing setup guy who's throwing 100 plus and everyone's excited about. You got Gallegos, who has a really good track record and much more experience closing. And you stated that you're going to run somewhat of a committee this year. Do you continue with that? What would be your just strictly baseball philosophy? And then obviously, what are your thoughts for Helsley as a closer on, fantasy wise and on our team?
Yeah. I mean, I don't see any reason why they should change. I mean, I was looking at run differential for one of other topics, and they're in the top 8 in the league. So they're playing winning baseball. They're good. They're excelling at run prevention. The back end of their bullpen has been good, outside of I got one blow up for Gallegos where he gave up 4 unearned runs and he failed to cover first on a play that kind of led to that rally. And then, the lefty whose name is escaping me at the moment.
Genesis Cabrera.
There you go. Thank you. He has bouts of where he doesn't have it command wise, but I mean, otherwise they've been good in the back of that pen. Aaron Brooks has been good. Cody Whitley's been good. So to me, if I was the Cardinals, I wouldn't change anything. From a fantasy perspective, like I'm a repeated looping track here, in a league like TGFBI where it's saves or nothing, Helsley's value is limited and there's opportunities. Now we did play him this week because he had a 7-game week. So if they play winning baseball, he might get 2 chances. And that doesn't mean that Gallegos doesn't get 2 chances as well. But they've shown that they're willing to use both of them. So it'd be interesting to see how he splits them up, because to this point he had used Gallegos so like a pretty traditional 9th inning closer. He hadn't brought him in the 6th or 7th to face the heart of the order, or in the bottom of the 8th with the bases loaded, or that kind of. He's used them traditionally, but I think they've also been they've either the way their games have played out, there hasn't been a lot of opportunities for him to use him that way.
Okay.
So their run differential is quite good. So they have a lot of games where they're not in a safe position or they don't have a critical inning earlier in the game where they want to use him.
Right.
So, and I think the fact that Helsley has shown that he can go multiple innings is also something that he can use to his advantage.
Looking at our lineup, we have Bednar, who has looks like a 5-game week, or excuse me, 6-game week. And then Barlow with the 5-game week on the bench versus Seawald and Steckenrider, who both have 7-game weeks, and then Helsley with the 7-game week. At what point do we, or do you, in your thought process in creating a lineup, what's the threshold for games versus games and role and kind of role differential?
Yeah, I mean, ideally we'd have very clear roles and that would just supersede the amount of opportunities. In the situations like we have with like Seattle where it's fluid, obviously the more opportunities and also the quality of the opponent. With Bednar and Barlow's, both of them, not only were their opportunities potentially limited, but also they're playing really good teams. So I didn't see them, Texas and Pittsburgh are, teams that are not in the upper echelon. So how many chances are they going to have? So just trying to, hopefully we'll get more clarity. I don't think Pittsburgh's going to clear up. I think they're pretty clear about how they're going to use Bednar. I don't think that's going to stop. But I've been happy to have him in there. But I just thought, yeah, with both Steck and Seawald in there, the 7-game week, I have opportunity for 3 or 4 saves between them, which would be huge.
I think my one I guess disagreement is Bednar, is they're playing Detroit and Cincinnati, and I think there will be opportunities there. The other part is that Stratton kind of imploded last week, at least in one appearance. And there has been some fluidity in terms of role. I think they've used Bednar in the higher leverage situations in Pittsburgh. But it wouldn't surprise me for him to become a little bit more traditional closer down the road. But yeah, I think we're kind of splitting hairs at this point in time. I think we started the right 4, and Camilo Doval looks like he's probably. I know there was I think at least one appearance of McGee in a safe situation last week, but Doval looks to be the guy there.
Yeah, I hope so. That would be great for us.
That and O'Neal Cruz being brought up, I think will make a huge difference. But yeah, I was so far so good with TGFBI. This is our first foray into expert leagues, and as of right now, we're really holding our own. Lindor and Machado have also been big boosts for us, and Julio with his steals, but we are hanging in there, and we've got upside, so we're in the right place.
Yeah, and I love the way Vaughn is looking. He's one of those picks that we were debating about. Do we go with him like as a 4th outfielder? And he's just he's looking really good at the plate, and he's another pick that I've really just enjoying rostering him, and just really thankful to have him on the team.
Mm-hmm. Right. When you look at it, we're in 5th, and hitting is our kind of Achilles heel as of now. And Votto has obviously produced nothing. Julio has not hit yet. Acuna just came back, and Ketel Marte hasn't done anything yet.
Yep.
And so there's a lot from a track record standpoint. We've got a lot of room to grow. So yeah, I think we're sitting in a really good spot. It's good stuff. Good stuff. Fantrax. It's where the rubber meets the road.
Yes, it is.
So we have said 0 words about us matching up in Fantrax last week. In our league, there are weeks where you play against 2 different opponents. It's just a scheduling kind of goof, or a scheduling left turn, I guess. So I played Lux Laster, and you and I played. We'll start with our other matchup first. So I played Lux Laster, 9 wins, 2 losses, 3 ties, tied in hits, homers, and saves, and lost in OPS and errors. But I won runs, RBIs, steals, Ks, whips, wins, losses, and holds. I don't have too much to say about that matchup. It's less interest to me than our matchup against one another. I think my team played okay this last week. There were opportunities for me to win a couple of the categories that I lost to Lux Laster at the very end, but I don't have a whole lot to say. I'll save it for our matchup there. How about you?
Well, I don't look at who I play, and if Matt hadn't said anything to me, I wouldn't have known I was playing you.
Mhm.
And comment about the podsters or something. I was like, oh shit, I'm playing Tino. So I intentionally try to keep keep away from that. Yeah, I played you and I think Billy Bean, but I'm not positive about that. I mean, all I can say is, from my perspective, is I went 11-1-2 in pitching. And I was number 2 in the league in innings pitched, number 2 in the league in at-bats.
Mhm.
So I feel like, those are the things I focus on, managing my pitching staff and making sure I'm maximizing my potential, for the in the hitting category. So those are the things I feel like I have more control over. And I think you and I split and had an opportunity to win. I think going into the Sunday night game, but Schwarber saw to it that we would end in a tie. So, which helps us in TGFBI. So, and I love Schwarber, so I can't hate on him for that. That's the way it goes.
I was pretty lucky. Schwarber hit, for those who don't know, Schwarber hit 2 home runs.
Yeah.
And that brought me into a tie in that category with you. And Scherzer had 9 strikeouts, which is exactly what I needed to tie you in strikeouts. But interesting pitching matchup and interesting
It really was
clash in philosophies a little bit, because I had 56.2 innings pitched and you had 73.1. So many more starters than I did, or many more innings than I did. And we tied in Ks. You beat me in ERA 1.72 to 3.18. My ERA would have been much more respectable if I would have not started Matt Brash, who killed me. WHIP was pretty close, 1.076 to 1.023. Your 9 wins versus my 6, my 3 losses versus your 2. You won saves 5-4 and I won holds 5-3. But to me, the interesting part is that, I had fewer innings, tied in Ks, won in holds, but your pitching line across the board was pretty darn impressive. But yeah, good. It's a good matchup. It was a fun matchup, and your team is going to be scary when Reynolds, I think, or Reynolds and Votto and some of the other underperformers start to actually hit. But it's got to be nice to have Yelich back a little bit, kind of getting back to Christian Yelich form, and Corey Seager's hitting. Corey Seager actually starting to look pretty good in Texas. I'm worried about Simeon there. I actually thought about Simeon as a buy low this week, but I don't know if I've seen enough out of him to even look to buy low yet.
Well, not dissimilar from Votto. What else do you have to go on right now besides track record?
Right. Exactly.
So that, or you want to play into. When doing some prep earlier, I was Texas is actually in the bottom 5 in strikeout rate.
Mm-hmm.
And was just talking about how good their hitting coach is. I hadn't heard about that, and then I heard Eno say that in yesterday's pod, and then today I was doing studying for the pod here for us, and I was like, oh man, Texas is in the bottom 5 in terms of strikeouts in a good way.
Right.
So yeah, it's just interesting to see how he can help Seager and help Simeon get through that, and then also just the young guys they have trying to maximize. They score runs, they're just not preventing runs efficiently enough to win games.
Their pitching is pretty bad, and their outfield defense is also pretty bad. I think that they've got some work to do still to get to where they need to be. Question for you. At what point, so someone like Matt Brash, who I roster, is my 6th starter. Obviously, he throws 98. He's got 2 great breaking balls. His stuff plus at the beginning of the year was off the charts. But we're learning pretty quickly that he can't, that he walks left-handers, and he's been very erratic up to this point. What do you do with a pitcher like that? I know league size, it's league size dependent. Let's talk about like 15, 16 team leagues.
Mm-hmm.
what do you do with him right now? Right. He has 3 starts under his belt. He's looked, for lack of a better word, he's looked pretty shitty. I still believe in his talent. I still believe that he's better as a bulk reliever than he is as a starter. The Mariners have the luxury of having Levi Stroud and George Kirby in the minors that they can bring up to replace him. What do you think? Actually, start 4 games, not 3. Excuse me. But what do you think his the leash is on Matt Brash as far as being a starter? And what do you do with him? What do you do with him for
Mariners
fantasy?
or for you as a GM?
I think both.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Mariners have to give him an opportunity, another couple opportunities, and then they got to think about, at what point does the development opportunity at the highest level coming at the risk of maybe his confidence, or can he go back down or be in a different role and work on some of the other things that they've identified that he needs to get better at? Because they're smart pitching wise, they know what he needs to get better at. So I think another turn or two, if it doesn't improve, I could definitely see them, and I think it makes perfect sense for the player and the team to go in a different direction. They have depth. They have a deep bullpen. They could throw a bullpen game once a week, or bring someone up or stretch someone out. I think for you, I mean, you're in a position where I'm looking at your roster. I see, and forgive me if I'm mistaken, I see 6 starters. And so he's your 6th starter. So if you choose, for example, not to start him tomorrow at Houston, you have to go to the waiver wire to find a 6th starter. Unless, nope. Well, yeah, no, you're not. You're good because Rodon starts twice this week.
Right.
So, you just hope that San Francisco doesn't get rained out. And if he pitches, you'd be all right this week. But I mean, if you're able to be in a position either through depth or 2 start weeks to set him, especially in a matchup at Houston, I think it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think you have enough bulk quality where you can absorb the potential blow up for the potential upside of a 12 strikeout game, which he's certainly capable of if he's feeling that. I just to compare or relate, I'm in a similar position with Ashby. Ashby didn't flash what Brash did this year in his first start, at least.
Mm-hmm.
But his command has been erratic, and so he's kind of a whip risk to me right now. Now he's done a good job managing the damage from an ERA perspective, and his swings and misses are very good, but his command is erratic. So, I'm starting to think about where do I want to use him, and also how many opportunities will Milwaukee continue to give him? Can I even rely on him to be a starter going through the season as I kind of plan to?
Mm-hmm.
You have to kind of take that into account, and he pitched 5 2/3 for me this week and posted like a 1-1 whip, and that was only giving up 1 hit.
Wow.
That was, that's kind of where you're at. So, I have to consider, what's the potential ratio risk. And I think you have to do the same,
Right.
Whether that's through your matchup or how you're feeling about your volume overall.
Mm-hmm.
And then practically, like I said, if you're going to go away from him, you got to find another starter. It looks like
the question, I think that this is where the difference in league comes up, where if this was a 12-team league, there'd be a good chance that there was a Tyler Anderson or someone like that on the wire that I could go pick up to replace Brash. And so then the question would be, do I want to give up on Brash now, or do I want to continue to roll with him? It's also the difference for me in terms of roto versus head to head is 4 pretty bad starts in roto is going to have a big impact on your bottom line, right?
yes.
Whereas if he blows up, but I can cushion it in a head to head, you just move on to the next week and hope. I'm more likely to hold on to a pitcher with better skills in a head to head than I am in roto, because roto, you continue to feel the impact of a bad start, way down the road. The other thing I'll say is in a league like ours, which is 16 teams, it's, even though I don't believe in pitching prospects too much, this is the reason why, or one of the reasons why I'll roster or try to roster pitching prospects that are good and closer to the majors. Because if I didn't have Kirby and Max Meyer, who both have been pretty lights out up to this point, knowing that they're going to be a part of their team's pitching staffs pretty soon, I'd have no buffer for Brash being or having done what he's done up to this point. But I feel more comfortable hanging on to Brash and his talent because I do think he'd be a lights out reliever and a huge asset as a SPRP. Knowing that Kirby would probably be the one to replace him allows me to kind of to ride out Brash in a little bit different way. So I think some of the differences between 12 versus 15, 16 teams and roto versus head to head are really important to consider when you're thinking about whether to hold on to really any player and understanding the detail of the league itself before making that decision.
Yeah, I think another thing I would highlight is the fact he's still minors eligible. So it gives you an opportunity to tuck him away there if you want to back off him for the time being.
Right.
And add someone in that roster spot on your active roster without facing that decision of having to cut him. Just gives you it's another wrinkle built into our platform and our construction that I think is nice, and he still has that.
I agree.
Looking at your ratios, I mean, you're fifth in earned run average and fifth in WHIP, and so he's you're in the top third of the league in those ratios. Despite his struggles.
Right. So let's take a quick break. We'll come back with some chatter about our hitting and what to do with that, some of the things that have happened on the waiver wire, and some players that we're targeting for the upcoming weeks in various formats. We'll be right back. And we're back. So for your team, what questions do you have this upcoming week? And what are you doing on the margins with your roster in order to get better?
Yeah, so I mean, currently my team is last in OPS. I'm not sure what I can do in the immediate short term, other than just continue to. I've reached out to a couple owners who've had players coming back from the injured reserve to see if that creates any opportunity for an acquisition of a player, someone that's squeezed. Nothing is imminent. So yeah, and just looking at underlying skill metrics for the players on my roster to make sure I'm making the best decisions I can in terms of starting lineup. Again, there's not a ton of options there, but trying to be as informed as I can. I'm looking at platoons for the week in terms of lefty, righty, other guys I want to play on certain days, looking at the schedule from week end to week beginning. Yeah, and then just that's really it. That's kind of where I'm at. I don't really know what I can do if my team doesn't start to hit in the next month or so. I don't know, what my long-term fortune will be because there's just not a lot of opportunity to continue to acquire players on the waiver wire.
Right. So this is a question that is a fascinating one for me because, as much as we look at some of the same numbers and statistics, I think we have really, at times, almost opposite approaches to this question of, you have underperformance in certain places. And I would correct me if I'm wrong, but I would call you a bit of a tinkerer, and you'll think, okay, what can I do differently? What have I done? What have I done good and bad? And what can I do differently to make it better week to week, and looking at, where you stand with versus other teams. And whereas for me, I just think this is our nature. But for me, it's much more. I tell myself, I did the scouting. I know that baseball's a long season. I think I hold for too long, right? I've held to Moncada for however many years, and the Buxton part is paying off. But to me, it's more skills and tools and talent that will win out in the end. And so when I look at your team, I think you're super solid at just about every position. If there's one position that may need a little help, it's second base, but really that's it. And even Segura is not bad, right? But you just happen to have a bunch of players who are off to rough starts. And so I think if I was in your position, I would have to tell myself to just be less reactive and trust that I know what I'm doing and that I have really good players. Because I look at your offense at first glance, and not just name recognition, but what I know about those players talent-wise, I see a really good offense, right? And so it's not my team to manage, but what I would say to your response about where you're at with your team is just ride it out, man. Make the
Yeah.
playoffs and ride it out and hope that, you know, 2 or 3 of your stars get hot because the
Yeah.
talent's there. For me, it's a lot of it is looking at my roster and trusting the core players that I've invested in and knowing that I need to operate on the margins, right? And so I'm not messing with Julio or Buxton or Acuna or Tatis when he comes back or Schwarber or Moncada. And Moncada is probably that cutoff. But I have room to tinker at second base, right? It's why I picked up Michael Busch. Michael Busch has 9 home runs. I think it's 9 home runs so far in the minors. And he doesn't have a path to playing time in LA, but they're playing him in the outfield a little bit, knowing that they might want him to play some corner outfield and second base and first base soon. That's my place to tinker. But the rest of the team, man, like just, you got to, I tell myself I need to just trust the research that I've done.
Yeah.
And really the time to really tinker with my roster is doing the research in the off season and then heading into the draft, because unless I find some, you know, fabulous deal from someone else to get more offense, it's really hard to find OPS, and it's really hard to find steals once the year started. But again, I look at your team and I think your offense is going to be just fine, honestly.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, and I think I'm definitely trying to take a more measured approach to the best of my ability. I think it's just it's challenging, especially early in the season. Maybe you feel it a little bit more than you do in the middle.
Right.
You want to be excited. You want that confirmation of the work that you put in. So it's just more, I think, challenging emotionally early on to. But ultimately, I agree with where you're at. And I know I talk about this movie a lot with the Moneyball movie, but it's I've watched that movie a lot, and it's kind of in my head whether I like it or not. But there's this scene where he asked Peter, he's like, "Do you believe in what we're doing or not?"
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "I do." He's like, "Then what are we talking about?" You know,
Right.
and I've thought about that a couple of different times this week of like, do you believe the work? Do you believe in your process or not? I do.
Yeah.
So what are you talking about?
Oh.
So are you going to let a month shake that down, or are you going to stay the course?
Right.
So anyway, that's kind of the self-talk that I'm in. And just, again, you don't want to stick your head in the sand. Like you said, you got to work the margins. And I have been like looking for, hey, are there opportunities to improve? You don't want to leave the stone unturned.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm proud that I'm not like emotionally jerking people in and out of the lineup and creating missed opportunities. I'm not dropping players outside of Luis Garcia, who I rage dropped by. You know, I'm not doing silly stuff like that. And I didn't even do any waiver picks this week, which I thought I wasn't going to do. And I stuck to it. So
nice. So Luis Garcia, the reliever?
Yeah.
Oh, you did. You're right. I didn't. So I picked him up, but I didn't look to see who had dropped him.
Yeah.
I just like the skills and the potential opportunities. So
he and Stephen Wilson are kind of like battling for that right-handed complement to Taylor Rogers. And I think that there's real value there. They're kind of using Stephen Wilson kind of in the middle of the game, but he also pitches at the end of the game.
Right.
Whereas Garcia, he pitched really well for the Cardinals last year. And I kind of thought he would emerge in their pen. He does have good skills. He throws the ball hard.
They used Suarez. I think it was Sunday. They used Suarez in a leverage role, and he kind of imploded. So I anticipate Garcia. He's my 6th reliever. So we have 5 in the lineup, unless you have a SPRP. So he's kind of the one that I can wait on a little bit. But the skills were there enough, and the opportunity enough there for me to invest in him. So 2 quick things, all kind of off the cuff. One is, and this is just an insight into how we are, our baseball nerddom. I got a text from Matt just now saying Melendez is DHing and batting 7th. And I'm super excited for MJ Melendez. So I went in and changed my lineup and put Melendez in the lineup today. I have Wilson Contreras as well, but he's who's probably the smarter play, but he's going against Kopech, which is not the best matchup for righties.
Sure.
And if Melendez hits a homer, it'll be unforgivable for me to not have him in the lineup day one. So that's just a little baseball fun. I want to ask a quick question for both of us to answer. Who's your favorite hitter and your favorite pitcher on my team? And I'll answer that about your team. I can start if you want me to.
Yeah, please. I'm gonna pull up your roster. Go ahead.
Right. So somebody who I have really absolutely loved watching is Brian Hayes. He's such an exciting player. He's to me, he's already the best fielding third baseman in baseball. His athleticism is off the charts at third, which is weird to say because you don't think of third as in the same way you think of shortstop and center field, but he just stands out and he's learning to hit the ball in the air a little bit. To me, there's superstardom, at least potential there. And no one really knew whether he would even hit when he was drafted. You know, he was drafted as a field first, third baseman with pedigree.
My credit score as quickly as possible.
Hold on.
Borrowing from the start was incredibly simple.
Is that you or me? That was me. Excuse me. So I've just really, really, really enjoyed watching Brian Hayes. If I had another Pirate on my team, he would make them must-watch television for me. And I'm really, when you made the trade to trade, I think it's Brandon Woodruff, right?
Mm-hmm.
For Brian Hayes in the offseason, I definitely felt like the Woodruff side in that moment won the trade because of Woodruff's skills. And even though as pitcher for hitter, I still think that, in that moment, I thought so. I don't anymore. I think Hayes is for real. For one, I think he's legit 2020 and a 300 hitter. And in thinking about it, your ability to identify the next good pitcher or the next great pitcher should be worth something to you in terms of team construction. And so I kind of swing the other way with regards to who won that trade at this point. But I just love Brian Hayes, and I'm glad that one of the three of us has him on their team because he's such a fun player. Who's the hitter for you?
It's hard because I feel like I've talked a lot about these guys already.
Yeah.
Schwarber and Buxton are two guys who I both like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have to say Buxton, but it's just not that much of an original answer, but it's the truth.
All right.
So, yeah, he's force, and I love watching him at the plate and what he does in the field on the bases. He's the whole package. So, he's my absolute favorite hitter on your roster. I was Schwarber in a close second.
Have you watched Julio much?
Yeah, I have. I've actually been able to watch Mariners games, and I've seen probably 8 or 9 of his at-bats.
I don't bring him up because I'm mad that you didn't say Julio, because I'm not. That's your opinion. But what's interesting to me is he's so athletic that he's almost a more powerful version of Buxton in some ways. Right. And I didn't think of Julio that way coming up. I thought of him as a really great hitter who has a lot of power potential, but because of his speed, that he's a larger human being, right? He's 6'4", they say 225, but rumor is he's closer to 235. He's like a big linebacker, right?
Yeah.
And but I love that kind of outfielder too, that like athletic, badass outfielder. But both of them are able to actually barrel the ball up too. But yeah, I'm overjoyed right now with Julio. But yeah, Buxton has always been a favorite for me. Pitchers on your team. I'd say my favorite is, it's gonna be I like Musgrove a lot, and Buehler is, like I said on a previous pod, I think Buehler has the potential to be the #1 fantasy starter in 2023. But my favorite this is going to sound funny, but my favorite is actually Tyler Anderson. I got to watch him. I got to watch him pitch for the Mariners a little bit last year. I was really heartbroken that he didn't re-sign with the Mariners. He's got a lot of deception, and he knows how to pitch, and he's tough. I had a tremendous amount of confidence in him every time he took the ball for the Mariners. And I was happy to see that the Dodgers saw something in him too. And I think he's, I'm looking at his stats right now for you, and he's got 17 and 2/3 innings, 13 hits, 15 Ks, 2.55 ERA, and a 0.0962 WHIP. It's great.
Look at his K minus VB. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. He's he's fun to watch. If I think of, dreaming on the Mariners, if they would have signed him and you could have put Brash in the bulk role, I think they would have been that much better off.
Yeah.
But no, Tyler Anderson is, and people raised their eyebrow when he signed one year $8 million contract with the Dodgers, but obviously they saw something too. And, like I said, I love Musgrove and Buehler as well. We've had our debates about Alcantara. He's still a great pitcher, but that's always a fun debate.
Yeah.
And then Ronzi, I'm interested to see what happens with him too.
Yeah. So for me, this is a very, for anyone who knows my team and my leanings, this is a very Aaron answer, but it's Bednar is my favorite pitcher.
Nice.
Apparently we're an all pirate podcast today,
Right.
But no, he's just completely badass. And he's exactly the kind of pitcher that I'd love to have on my fantasy team in this league. He has 4 holds, 2 saves. His K minus VB is fantastic. He is serious gas. He has 2 other plus pitches, and he's just a beast on the mound. And I love those kind of pitchers, and I love that he fills the stat sheet across the board in our league. And I just hope as the Pirates get better, he'll have more, more opportunities to do what he does, because he's just a really good pitcher. To me, Helsley is someone that's kind of like him, or could be someone like him. I know Helsley's in the headlines right now, but he's someone who throws hard and is competitive on the mound, and just a damn good pitcher, no matter what you ask of him. I really love him.
I'm surprised you didn't say David Robertson or Mark Melanson.
And I watched Robertson close the game out on Sunday, in my Sunday baseball palooza, watching 4 or 5 games at once. And he looked really, really good. His curve looked really good, and I had an inkling to go after him week 1 of free agency for TGFBI, and I wish I had pushed harder.
Mm-hmm. That was when I picked him up. I saw 1 save and I said, well, this is worth taking a shot on just for role purposes. And he's turned out to be a bit better than that.
Well, he's been really good. But yeah, I think certainly Bednar has a higher ceiling. It's just so much fun to watch. I love those type of guys, obviously.
Mm-hmm. One other bit of news, it looks like Yoan Moncada is probably going to be back this week.
Good.
May even be back today. Nothing has shown up yet in terms of news. Yes, I do check for Yoan Moncada news once an hour, basically right now. But he, encouragingly, he had a home run in his first minor league appearance, and I think he may have had a steal or a steal attempt as well. So it's get all my guys back, hopefully here soon.
Yeah.
Should we cover some trades?
Yeah, and other news, Johan Duran got his first save last night.
Saw that. And every save out of the SPRP roll is worth its weight in gold. 100% worth its weight in gold.
I'm really excited. I'm number 3 in saves, number 4 in hold. So to be in the running in both of those categories just early on, where I don't have to be churning relievers on the waiver wire to try to fill those categories. And I've only, gotten 1 save so far from Barlow, and I think he's gonna have a lot more chances. So
right. Well, and it's I don't know what the numbers are, but I feel like we churn the most, with the reliever role.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of those early waiver claims that are burnt that come back to haunt you later are because you don't have your relievers set and in place. And so to get that relief core kind of locked in, or at least minimally locked in is I think is huge. I've got some decisions to make coming up when Trinan and Melanson come off the DL. I like my relievers. I think Brooks Raley I picked up for holds in Tampa. He might be one that will go because he's only pitched 6 innings thus far. I really like Phil Maton a lot, but the decision will come down to Maton or Luis Garcia probably, and Garcia just has more likelihood of picking up saves, so I'll probably hold on to him. You talk about some trades?
Yeah.
So first trade, Matt Whitlock traded away Michael Conforto, Carson Kelly, Travis d'Arnaud, Madison Bumgarner, Sir Anthony Dominguez, an empty can of Diet Pepsi, 3 pennies, some pocket lint, a round 3 and a round 9 to Derp. And Matt received Garrett Whitlock, Brandon Marsh, a round 4 and a round 15. That's a lot. I think Derp subsequently cut Conforto and Kelly, I believe. So really it was d'Arnaud, Bumgarner, and Sir Anthony for Whitlock and Marsh and some picks. What's your initial reaction to that trade?
Somehow I missed when I initially came across that Dominguez was part of that. I just saw Bumgarner and the catcher. It's hard for me to get over my irrational love for the players on Matt's side and try to be subjective. Certainly it looks like Derp wanted to upgrade his catching position because Carson Kelly's off to a horrendous start. And he was looking for more innings, more reliable innings than Whitlock. I prefer Matt's side of this. I really love the way that Marsh is seeing the ball. He's just been on time and his strikeout rate's still manageable. And I just have loved what I'm seeing out of him. And he's also a speed asset. Matt also has a Dell as editor side note. So I think there was some thought on his part of, maybe some platooning potentially going on now that they're going to play Taylor Ward every day. And I mean, the previous episode, my thoughts about Garrett Whitlock. I just think he's undervalued. And I think from my read on this, I think he was a little bit undervalued by Derp.
You think Matt plans on keeping Whitlock?
I have to say probably not. But I would.
So unless
Matt is always looking for an opportunity to turn. So.
Well, I think the only way, because so for context, Matt isn't competing this year. He's got a lot of minor leaguers, a lot of young players.
Yeah.
For me, the trade makes sense if he sees Whitlock as a keeper, or if he understands that Whitlock will have value trading him to someone else to pick up, for pickup grade or prospect he wants or something like that. Otherwise, well, I still think he won the trade. Bumgarner is trash. I'm sorry, but he's a number 5, 6 in our league at best. And I would much rather have Matt Brash over Madison Bumgarner. That's me.
Yeah.
I do think he stands to benefit a little bit from the lack of offense or the change in baseball, but still not a player that I would want. Dominguez is an asset. Dominguez is a good holds reliever, but unless it's one of the top, unless it's a Devin Williams or a Blake Trinan, those guys are fungible. You can find those guys, right? And so having to trade for one doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So Marsh and his upside and Whitlock and his upside to me are the clear winners in this trade. But I would expect nothing less from the two participants in this trade. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, you can make a case for both sides. I just like Matt's side.
Yeah, I'm not making a case for Derp's side, sorry. The next trade is Soul Kitchen traded away Clay Holmes, a reliever from the Yankees, and a round 1 for Tristan McKenzie and a round 13 to Smurf.
So who got the round 1? That went to Soul. Okay.
Yep. So Soul basically gave away Tristan McKenzie for a 1 is really what it comes down to.
I don't know, man. Clay Holmes is looking pretty damn good. I know we just said Sir Anthony is
he is
fungible, but Clay Holmes is looking like the best reliever in that bullpen right now.
You mean Clay Holmes is looking like Sir Anthony Dominguez? Hence the fungible comment.
Yeah.
McKenzie, I think McKenzie's the one that to talk about. Picks are picks. I'm not too worried about the picks, but Smurf's rotation has kind of taken a bit of a hit. He has Gosman, Woodruff, Urias has been good. I would say not great thus far. Tanner Houck, But he needed another starter. He's got Flaherty and Snell that are hurt, and May that's hurt, and Heaney. So he's got a lot of good starters, but McKenzie thus far, 23 in the third, 17 hits, 7 walks, 24 strikeouts. So 1.029 whip and a 2.70 ERA. There's a lot of divide, I think, in the fantasy community as to what to think of Tristan McKenzie coming into this year. I think it was a good trade on Smurf's part, especially wanting to compete this year. But I don't know that I expect those numbers from McKenzie moving forward. Personally, I don't have numbers to back that up because I haven't dug deep into Tristan McKenzie this year. But he's one that I've rostered in the past, but I don't know that I would hitch my wagon to as of right now. Also, one more thing. One of the strangest looking baseball pitchers I've ever seen.
Sure.
In that he's incredibly skinny.
Yeah, I reached out to Doug after this trade just to basically saying, tell me what you like about McKenzie. Because I respect his opinion, and I like you. I'm just not super familiar, but I don't ever naturally feel comfortable with him. As someone I really covet. He put so I love him. He said, I see his first season after getting stretched out. That was a false sign of where he was. This is probably the last chance to get him cheap. And then he went out on his first start after he had him. He went 6 1/3, only gave up 4 hits and a walk and 7 strikeouts. So I don't know. He believes in him, and he has a good eye. So he's a player that we need to dig deeper in and try to figure out what it is about him that makes us uneasy.
Let's do one of us do that next for the next pod. Dig into McKenzie.
That'd be worth it.
So the final trade to discuss was Luis Matos and a 14 going to Matt for round 6 to balls deep. The Matos is Matos, right? I think he's an outfield prospect like a bunch of other outfield prospects, and we know that Matt's trying to acquire those. The interesting part of this trade to me is when I look at balls, I think Balls Deep does a really great job with prospects because he quite frankly doesn't have room for prospects on his team. He's got enough depth in major league talent that he doesn't need them. And when you look at his roster, he hasn't really developed young prospects or had young prospects on his team that he's nurtured and are now stars for him. I think he looks at them simply as free money. I can roster 5 prospects and then trade a prospect to someone like Matt for an 8-round pickup grade. And we've seen it do it time and again, or offer prospects for players. And he's built a really incredible roster by going about it that way. What do you think about that strategy? And is that something that you would do if you had is that something that you've considered doing?
Yeah, I think if I could get other players to see the value in the prospects and try to get a return, I would try to do that. I'm not confident in my ability to do it, however.
I think he just makes a bunch of speculative picks, right? And then continues to check like rankings and things, and then starts throwing those guys into trades or waiting for somebody to ask for them. I bring it up in part because I respect the ability to do that. I just feel so much on the opposite end of the spectrum with regards to minor leaguers and young prospects, where if I have an emotional investment in anybody, it's those guys. And it's really, really difficult for me to give any of those guys up if I consider them to be like guys that I love or that I'm invested in. Like it would take an arm and a leg to get Tamar Johnson away from me at this point, right? In the same way that it would take an arm and a leg to get George Kirby away from me. And that might be irrational, but that's part of what I love about the way our league is set up, is that I get attached to those young players and we have the space to actually carry them. Even Christian Vaquero, who there's a whole bunch of prospects out there that I love that I should probably cut for Vaquero, but I just like Vaquero, right? Anyways, I think that was the interesting part of that trade to me, was how Balls Deep uses minor leaguers to improve his team with little or no intention in actually having them in his starting lineup at any point in time.
Right. No, it's something for sure.
So do you want to go over wire targets, or do you want to skip to Major League Baseball?
Major League Baseball.
You got it. So first question. The Mets, there was a big kind of brouhaha this past week about the Mets and how much the Mets get hit and people are throwing at the Mets players, and is the lack of any kind of sticky substance leading to a lack of control, which leads to players getting hit, and that's dangerous. I found it interesting, and just kind of top of mind knew that they rostered players that have gotten hit a lot historically. So I went back and did some digging, and what I found was really fascinating. And
Okay.
just to put the conclusion out there, or the thesis statement out there in the beginning, the Mets are full of shit, because I think they intentionally rostered players whose OBPs were boosted by hit by pitch, and almost as if it was a strategy. So in 2021, the Mets currently roster 3 of the top 16 players in 2021 with regards to hit by pitch. Mark Canha was hit 27 times, Starling Marte 13, and Pete Alonso 12. So 3 of the top 16. Since 2019, the Mets have the 2nd ranked player hit by pitch wise, the 4th, the 6th, and the 10th. So Mark Canha has been hit 55 times since 19, Alonso 39, Marte 38, and McNeil 34. So our pitchers throwing at the Mets intentionally, the case might be made, maybe, but in my opinion, no more than any other team.
Correct.
They're just getting hit a ton because they get hit a ton. That's literally the approach of their hitters, is to crowd the box and to lean in, right? So ESPN and everyone else spent all of this time in dialogue about whether the Mets are being targeted. Buck Showalter is standing on the top step all the time, glaring at people. And as far as I'm concerned, they did it intentionally.
Yeah.
They literally brought it upon themselves. So I needed to get that out of my system, because as I researched that more, I was like, man, screw those dudes.
Yeah. Isn't there a rule where if you like present the bat and you get, like, what is the rule around that? Like, if you put the bat over the plate, either to bunt or to swing, and then the ball runs in over the inside part of the plate and you get hit by it, like, at what point is it no longer on the pitcher?
I think the rule is if it's considered I want to say if it's a strike and it hits you, if it's considered a strike and it hits you, then that's on the batter, but I have to look it up.
Interesting. As I saw that twice, where once was a bunt attempt and one was a half swing, where they got their hands out over near the plate, and then the ball like glanced off like their wrist or their hand, and they're like, "Hey, you hit me." I'm like, "You're swinging in the out towards the plate
zone, right?"
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Presenting the bat, and it runs inside, and we can go to the next issue, which is some sort of substance to help the pitchers get better grip on it. But we see that all the time. If a guy's that comes on the arm side and it runs inside on the guy, if they're swinging, they're going to be in the path of the ball if they don't command that pitch.
Right.
But yeah, it just confused me because I thought, wait a minute, he's swinging. How is that on the pitcher?
There is, in my opinion, there are so many reasons why decreasing velocity and having pitchers throw longer is beneficial to baseball. This is just one of them to me. I think if there's less danger in getting hit by a pitch, if everyone isn't throwing 100 miles an hour, right? I think that it was more acceptable to throw at hitters or to throw inside to hitters 15, 20 years ago, because somebody throwing 95 was a huge deal, right? And there are very few of them. But the difference in getting being able to get out of the way of 100 versus getting out of the way of 88 is huge.
Yeah.
To me, it's just one of the many reasons why I hope that we start to see rules that force pitchers to pitch further into the game and quicker with less velocity.
Yeah.
So the sticky stuff, were you watching Sunday Night Baseball, and did you hear David Cohn's comment about sticky stuff?
I didn't, but I will say that I do think that something that the baseball needs to put in place is having some sort of universal approved grip enhancer, just to try to have more consistency with the baseball, so that pitchers have a better feel, both for their health and also the health and safety of the hitters. Because when guys have to grip the ball harder, they in turn are putting more stress on their tendons and their elbows. And then obviously it puts the batter at risk when guys, do lose control of a pitch.
Right. And there are other ways to, so the argument would be made, if the pitcher can create more spin or hold on to the ball better, then there's going to be less offense. But I think there are ways to create more offense, even with supplying a universal kind of stickiness to pitchers, right? Things like the shift, things like a pitch clock that forces pitchers to throw more frequently and subsequently less hard. Those are two quick things that come to mind that help to create more offense. And that was David Cohn's point, was just that, look, they need to have better control of the ball. Baseball should do everything in its power to provide something, but then to level the playing field by giving it to everybody. So that was a great point.
No, I agree 100%.
Cohn is one of those players that I associate with the Yankees, who I've always kind of liked. Those are few and far between, but I feel like he's been a really an asset to the Sunday night booth thus far. Also, you'll never catch me watching the Michael Kay and A-Rod version of commentary on ESPN2 on Sunday Night Baseball.
Right.
Sounds pretty bad. We're going to take another quick break, and we will come back with talking about what we consider to be the best teams in baseball, what we're looking forward to in this upcoming week, and then a quick open forum. See you soon. And we're back. Aaron, who's the best team in baseball thus far?
This was a challenging question. I looked at top 5 pitching stats by XFIP. I looked at top 5 hitting teams by WRC plus, and I looked at run differential. I was hoping to be able to find a hot take or something interesting, but unfortunately the usual suspects populated those lists. Top 5 pitching teams were the Giants, the Dodgers, the Brewers, the Mets, and the Yankees. Top 5 hitting teams were the Angels, which surprised me, the Yankees, the Mets, the Mariners, and the Rays. I was surprised to see the Rays up there because my impression of the Rays was they've been sluggish. Run differential wise, the top 5 were the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Giants, the Mets, and then the Twins were surprise number 5 for me. Again, I feel like they've been in a lot of close games. They battled. Buxton was out for like a week. I didn't realize that they had been doing that well. And then followed closely by Milwaukee, St. Louis, San Diego. The Angels and Mariners were all right there in the next cluster run differential. So, the obvious answers would be the Dodgers or the Yankees or the Mets. And I didn't find anything in the data to say otherwise. The Dodgers, the second best pitching team. They really haven't hit yet to their standards, but still own the best run differential in baseball. So I have to say they're probably the front runners because they're pitching well, preventing runs, and their offense is yet to really find its stride.
So this is interesting because we took different approaches and arrived at the same conclusions. So mostly for the sake of time, I just kind of typed in the teams that I thought were the best teams based on what I've watched thus far. And I've watched quite a bit of baseball thus far this season. The one team that I had on there that is probably not deserving is the Blue Jays. They have their run differential is even. I think that the reason why I think I probably also thought about the question as far as like who's going to be great this year and not just up to this point.
Mhm.
And their pitching is pretty scary, right? They don't have a whole lot of starting pitching, but if they can improve that at all, their offense is incredible. But the other teams I had on the list were the Mets, the Brewers, the Dodgers, and the Pirates, or excuse me, not the Pirates, the Padres, and not in that order. But it's fun because I feel like my intuition was right with regards to run differential, at least. That those are the top, some of the top teams in baseball. I don't trust the Mets. I think Bassett and Scherzer are great, but McGill, Taiwan Walker, the health of DeGrom, and then some of their bats that are a little bit old. I think I don't know that the Mets are going to continue to be a top 5 sort of team for the rest of the year. You're counting on Brandon Nimmo being great as he has been. I think Lindor obviously will continue to be great, as will Alonso. But I just don't see they've done a better job with roster construction this year. But I think they're counting on some peak performances and some health that's not going to continue. The Brewers, they just pitch the hell out of the ball. And
Yeah.
I feel like if they lose a starter, they'll go find another one somewhere in their system. They're just really smart with, pitching wise. And they're not getting any kind of incredible offensive performances yet from any of their players, right? And there's still upside. There's obviously upside with Yelich and Hura and, Tellez, and they don't need a ton from Adames, and Urias hasn't even played yet.
Mhm.
So the Brewers are I think, a championship contender.
I like the way they've added depth on their offense. I mean, last year their lineup was so
Mhm.
shallow, and just having Tellez and here at the corners, and then Urias ascending, and then they added McCutcheon in the outfield, and who's the young outfielder, Taylor?
Tyrone Taylor.
Tyrone Taylor.
Mhm.
So he's like their 5th outfielder, and they just have more quality on the margins
Mhm.
to really lengthen their lineup than they did in the past, and that hasn't necessarily shown up in the box score in terms of their offensive output, but it's just, to me, it just has it's a longer, more versatile lineup than it has
Right.
been.
Well, and they're a high performer. They have 19 run differential, and their offense hasn't even really picked up yet.
Right.
Adames has not played well. Wong has played horribly offensively. Like I said, Urias isn't even back yet. They've got nothing from Hiora really. So yeah, they're a championship contender as far as I'm concerned. The Padres are fascinating to me.
Mhm.
I want to see the Padres play well. It's funny because I root for them in part because I loved Tony Gwynn when I was young and Alan Wiggins, and I love their colors. I think the brown and yellow is just cool.
It is.
And they've got a ton of huge names, right? Like look at their pitching staff. Their pitching staff is like the 2016 All-Stars in some ways. I don't trust Preller to put together a championship team, but I'm rooting for them. And then the Dodgers, you spoke to the Dodgers. I think they're just a juggernaut, and it's going to be hard for another team to have a better record than them. But I still think, if you're talking about the playoffs, it's going to come down to a 7-game series, and anybody can beat anybody in a 7-game series.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Kershaw's health is huge, obviously. Bueller continuing to step up. And then if they can get anything from Bellinger and some of the other lower performing offensive players. But yeah, Dodgers are the team to beat as far as I'm concerned.
It's interesting because to me, the Brewers, the Giants, and even the Padres can all pitch with the Dodgers.
Uh-huh.
It's which of those 3 teams are going to be able to hit with, but again, in a 7-game series, it's who is hot then and who's healthy. But I think all 3 of those teams can match them pitcher for pitcher, which is maybe the Dodgers bullpen is a little bit better. The Brewers bullpen is good at the end, but in the middle, I think it's a little softer. The Dodgers are more deep from front to back, and same with the Padres. They have guys at the end, but it's more the middle. The Dodgers just keep running guys. Like they have Canley back now. Like you said, Trinan is on the IL.
But
It's just,
I feel like the Dodgers can continuously come up with guys that you've like barely heard of, like Evan Phillips,
mm,
right? Evan Phillips is out there throwing gas, and I'm like, well, who the hell is Evan Phillips, right? Or they bring up Bobby Miller to be a 2-inning reliever in, at the end of the season. It could be any number of things. They're so good and so smart. Real quick, what do you think of the Phillies thus far?
they're playing 500 baseball. I mean, and they look like it. They're just inconsistent, and Bryce Harper's hurt elbow, and I haven't seen where their defense has come back to haunt them, but you don't know how much of that is playing into the pitchers' minds as well. Knowing that they have guys behind them, a bomb at third, and the guys in the corners. If the ball goes on the ground to the left side of the infield, what's the outcome going to be? So, I don't know. I always kind of questioned whether they would deliver on the hype. Like, I admired they went out and got those guys and tried to address their needs. And Baum,
They're funny because there was a ball, it was either Saturday or Sunday, there was a ball hit to left field, and Schwarber, I think it was Sunday, Schwarber was running at it. It was in the gap between left and center, and he didn't get it, and it was a big kind of game-changing hit. And the commentator said that was a ball with a 70% chance of being caught. And it was such an obvious example of what happens when you have, I wouldn't say bad fielders, but just a lack of range in the outfield. And unless they're going to build a complete strikeout staff, you're just setting your staff up to fail in some ways. It was one of the things that I wish I would have thought of when I traded for Zach Wheeler in the offseason, was considering the defense in the park a little bit more. I did not expect Odubel Herrera to be their center fielder. You know what I mean? And so they're just kind of throwing defense to the wind. They're just, I feel like they're not even really considering it at all. So they're a fun team to watch for me. They've got individual players that I really love. I do love Harper and Castellanos and Schwarber. I think Hoskins is incredibly underrated. Bohm has actually been fun to watch because he's turned into a pretty good hitter. But, it's like watching the Rangers of our youth, and Pete Incaviglia and Juan Gonzalez, or the Tigers with Cecil Fielder and Pete Incaviglia and Rob Deere. It's you're never winning anything with a team like that.
right.
I think. Do you have any series that you're looking forward to, or any pitching matchups you're looking forward to this week?
Well, my big thing on the horizon is I'm hoping to be this a week from today in Pittsburgh for the Dodgers and the Pirates.
Oh, awesome. Really? Do you know what the pitching matchup is yet?
I haven't bought my ticket yet because I want to fudge it to try to land on a day where I can
on a good
Yeah.
matchup.
Yeah.
And how far away is Pittsburgh from home?
It's about 3.5, 4 hours. I'm planning on taking the train. There's a train station less than a mile from my house. So
Right on.
yeah, I haven't gotten my tickets. I don't know if we either be there Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, but I took Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off work. So I allow myself flex time to go see my first live baseball here on the East Coast. That's really what I'm looking forward to.
That's awesome. Looks like Monday is Urias versus Bryce Wilson. Tuesday is Undecided against Jose Quintana. And Wednesday is Tyler Anderson versus Zach Thompson. So it looks like picking probably the one pitcher that you want to see. Urias would probably be if it was me, my choice, although you don't know who's pitching on Tuesday. That's awesome though. That's going to be so fun.
Yeah, they have a day off this week. So if they push everybody back a day, it might be Bueller on Monday.
I know you'll be there for that for sure.
Exactly.
That's cool. That's so cool. That's going to be a blast.
Yeah, so that's the big thing on the horizon for me.
So tonight, I'll probably watch it after the fact once I get home from work. But tonight is Giants Dodgers, and it's Rodon versus Urias.
Okay.
So two fun lefty starters, Giants Dodgers rivalry. That's going to be incredible. And I obviously have Rodon. So that's super, super exciting for me. Mike Clevenger is coming back today.
Yes,
You starting him?
I am.
What do you expect from him?
4 innings, 6 strikeouts, couple runs, come out of it healthy, knock on wood. And that's what I'm hoping for. Yeah, he'll be my first start this week, and I just hoping for 4 or 5 good innings, and then he comes out healthy.
And what do you see in his, or what have you seen in his profile that motivated you to have him on your team?
Yeah, I mean, he has a strong track record of, a strikeout plus per inning, and also someone who can work, deep into games, someone who can manage his command. And I trust Melvin and the way that he handles pitchers. He showed that last year. He's willing to let guys pitch, and I just have a lot of trust in Melvin, and I like their bullpen, like the team context. And like I said, I have a soft spot for Clevenger.
Mhm.
Like watching him. He's a bit of a knucklehead, but I think he's a talented pitcher.
Mhm.
And like we talked about, you can't have enough pitching. So
Right.
I'm excited to have him as on the back end. I don't expect him to be 2019 Clevenger, but if he's healthy for that team, I think he's going to be valuable for them, and I think he'll be valuable for me.
He's certainly, like you said, context with wins. I think wins and losses, context is there for him to be a positive, and then strikeouts obviously as well. Cool. That's fun. That's always fun when you're getting a player back or getting a player coming off of injury. That, like, for me, anticipating Moncada coming back this week is huge. If I can get Moncada, Acuna last week and Moncada this week, I'm going to be happy.
Yeah.
Quickly, 2 player debuts this week, and then we'll move to open forum. Jose Miranda has been recalled and should be playing for the Twins. At first infielder. He's an interesting prospect because a bit of a pop-up prospect. I don't think he was on a lot of people's top 100s in 21, but considered a top 100 prospect in 22. What do you expect out of Jose Miranda, and where do you think he's going to play?
I think he's going to play at third
Mhm.
base for them, third base DH. Yeah, and I know that he's hit, and he's a bat first prospect. So I mean, he's going to have to hit to stay up. So yeah, I just look forward to seeing him. I don't really know, like you said, he's kind of a COVID player, not a COVID player, but a player who came out of that season, in a different place. And what led to that change was kind of behind closed doors, whether it was alternate site. We didn't have minor leagues. So that jump that he made, we can't quite track it, but he certainly dominated last year. So yeah, I'm just eager to see him. I don't really know what to expect, but I know that his bat will carry the day for him if he is successful.
Mm-hmm. He's interesting. He's the 73rd overall pick in 2016. Went to high school in Puerto Rico. He's listed at 6'2", 210, which is, I don't think of as a second baseman, right? And if you watch him play, he does look he's a little heavier than most second basemen. I assume he'll kind of settle in at third, maybe even first. I don't think that they have first really locked down necessarily. So more of a corner bat, which means as a right-handed corner bat, he's going to have to hit quite a bit to stick, but he's got the hit tool to be able to do that. So he's interesting because he's the kind of prospect or player that I think can be good, but I don't, because our ability to carry young players is not unlimited. He's one of those guys who I think I'd rather pass on and let somebody else take the chance to see if he's going to be good.
Yeah.
Because
as you spoke to before, I mean, with Matt, I mean, he's trying to give himself as many shots as he can. So,
right.
And he really values guys who have the carrying tools in terms of bat to ball.
Right.
So just giving himself as many chances as he can to try to hit makes sense. And real quick on Clevenger, I was to say, I think the more astute move might be to set him, if you're in a shallower league or something like that, make sure, he looks good. Unfortunately, with the depth of our league and our starts requirement, I just don't have that luxury. So right. I just want to add that caveat.
Right.
I think the more measured approach would be to wait and see how he looks. Because I could absorb a 3 inning 6 walk, but again, I don't have the luxury of just playing it slow.
Right.
But I'll be excited to see it nonetheless.
Yeah, if he's going to be on your team, he's got to be you know, you've gotta play him basically. All right. And then MJ Melendez makes his debut today. As I said, he's going to hit 7th in the lineup. He's DHing today. I expect them to move him around quite a bit. He wasn't hitting well in the minors in 2022. He had 41 home runs in the minors in 2021. I do think that there's some truth to a prospect being disappointed and being sent down with a strong previous year and a strong spring training and being a little less focused or not, you know, not performing up to where their standards. So I expect him to come up and hit some home runs, and I don't expect stardom from him, but I don't need to as a catcher. Really, I think in the beginning, what he'll be is if I have an obvious matchup that favors him and Wilson Contreras has less of a matchup, less of a good matchup for me, then I'll play him. But I anticipate him playing maybe 2-3 days a week for me. But very excited.
They really need a spark. You know what I mean?
You know, so this is another question that I think applies to them, applies to the Orioles, maybe a couple of other teams. But if you're Kansas City, I get the financial argument, but why wouldn't you just bring up Nick Prado and Vinny Pasquantino and MJ Melendez and bring all your young pitchers up, right? You've got Lynch and, you know, Kowar, and even if the guys aren't that good, you're not making the playoffs this year, right? Bring them up and let's see what you have and let them take their lumps. I don't remember what pod it was that I was listening to, but they were talking about how, you know, if you take like a Jared Kelnick and you send him down right now and he just goes bonkers in AAA, they say that can help his confidence, right? But he still has to learn how to hit major league pitching. He could come right back up and fail again. AAA is not going to do anything for him.
Right.
So, you know, like Kansas City, Baltimore like, how fun would it be if you're an Orioles fan and the Orioles just said, you know what, starting next Monday, Grayson Rodriguez is starting and Adley Rutschman is going to be your starting catcher and he's hitting third, right? We're bringing him up. Yeah. And you can expect Kobe Mayo at the end of the year. Like that would just be awesome. As an Orioles fan, I would be going to every game. You got to be so pumped to see our young players. But yeah, like Kansas City needs to start a whole new era. You've got Bobby Witt Jr., you've got Pasquantino and Prado, you have the young pitching, you've got even Kyle Isbell should be starting in the outfield, right? Yeah. Melendez at catcher, make Perez a 130 game DH. Anyways, to me, that's fun. Like that's so much more fun than watching teams roll out, even though his catch was beautiful yesterday, Michael A. Taylor in center. Right. All right, wrap it up. Open forum. What you got?
So my question was, we're playing in roto leagues and we have our head-to-head. You know, which league type would you rather get off to a slow start in?
Head-to-head.
Head-to-head?
100%.
Yeah.
Because the impact of a slow start can be quantified very easily in head-to-head. I can look at a record and say, okay, I need to make sure I'm in 8th place by the end of the year. I'm a couple games back right now. There's a sense of urgency and always wanting to get better, but the reality is I have some time to improve on my record, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those results are like stored away, packed away, and you understand the impact on your end of year immediately. In Roto, you could have a couple pitchers blow up, right? And give up, 8 runs in a start, 2 innings, 8 runs, whatever, or, 2 innings and walk 6. And the impact on your Roto line is it just sits there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And to me, it's harder to accumulate. Well, it's a moving target too. So it's not like wins and losses where you can just say, okay, I've won this many, lost this many. I don't really know what I'm shooting for. All I know is that those starts had a really negative impact on me. There's also, I think, a lot more luck in head-to-head. which makes a difficult start or a rough start in roto much more. Again, it's just, the impact is to me much more detrimental early. At least that's been my experience thus far. The other part is, if you get off to a difficult start in roto, or if your team isn't good for the first third of the season in roto, I think it's easy to not be as motivated, right?
Yeah.
And to pay less attention because you're depressed because your team's not really going anywhere. Whereas in head-to-head, you've got a chance every week.
Right.
I initially did not like the fact that 8 of the 16 teams in our head-to-head league make the playoffs. But what's cool about it is, in hindsight, I really love it, because you can get off to a poor start, but everyone is still engaged because it's not that difficult to come back and get that eighth seed. And once you're in the playoffs, anything can happen.
I think it's 6, by the way, not 8, unless Matt changed it.
Is it?
Yeah.
I know it used to be 8.
Because the top 2 get buys, and then, or the top, yeah, I don't know. We'll have to check it. I thought it was 6.
You're probably right. What about you? How would you answer your own question?
It's something I've been thinking about. As we talked about just a little bit earlier, I was saying the emotional element of just wanting to get off to a positive start. And then when guys struggle, I think it's a little easier in roto to know that, especially on the hitting side, like you spoke to the pitching and some of the destructive or long-standing effects a poor start can have with pitching ratios. Hitting wise, when you believe in sort of the track record and the pedigree of the players you have, knowing that it's going to balance out, they're going to regress back to where they are, you're going to get the positive improvement, and the standings will reflect that change. Whereas in head to head, it's a week at a time. So if someone hits 3 home runs this week, it doesn't change the fact they didn't do anything the prior week. You know what I mean? Like, you don't get that balance. But to your point, every week is a new week, so you're not necessarily encumbered by, how you started.
Right.
I'd find the week to week sample size challenging at times, the head to head element. But I certainly also see the merits of it from the competitive landscape, because people, to your point, as you said, when they get behind, they may disengage.
Right.
And then that's always bad for the competitive landscape and the enjoyment of the league for everybody.
Right.
You have a portion of the league that feels that they're no longer competitive.
It's one example just came to mind. Like, I look at, so we have Julio in TGFBI and I have Julio in our head-to-head league. The impact of his 9 steals is felt much more in TGFBI than it is in head-to-head, right? At least in my opinion. I saw at most those steals have provided me with 3 wins out of, 42 matchups or 42 opportunities to win, lose, or tie.
Sure.
Whereas in roto, if we're talking about like 120 steals being our target, he's just got us 8% of what we need for the season, right?
Yeah.
So I think that it's interesting to think about those 2 formats and what performance means. But I think that the slow start is more difficult to deal with in roto. But also the positive start sometimes can get you off to such a big start that it can have even more impact. All right, my question for you. Off the top of your head, what are your 3 favorite baseball uniforms over time? Just off the top of your head.
Yeah, I'd say I love the City Connect uniforms.
Mhm.
I was watching Cease yesterday. The White Sox ones were really, really awesome. And last week, the Astros, the dark blue and the dark orange, they looked really cool.
Space City, yeah.
Yeah, they were really awesome. So I've loved some of those uniforms, even the Royals ones, the fountains, those were really sweet as well.
Mhm.
So I've loved those. So I won't be able to tell you the years. I had the Padres, we already mentioned on this podcast, one of my favorite uniforms. I think on the Dodgers, that classic red, white, and the red and the white, especially their white uniforms. I don't like the gray one so much, but something about that Dodger blue on just the white, the red. It's very minimalistic, and it really draws my attention. And then like the '70s Pirates, the black and the gold.
With the flat top hat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back a little bit, that's probably my favorite vintage. So those are three that come to mind off the top of my head.
Awesome. I've got a bunch. I'm going to try to keep it short. You've got your classic uniforms like the Dodgers, like you talked about. I think the Royals uniform falls in that category. Cardinals, but I don't like the Cardinals uniform as much, but I think it's in that category as well. My favorite funky uniforms by far are the 80s Astros uniforms. I think are just like both home and away were just so cool, right? With the orange kind of multicolor right here. The White Sox from that same era, they're alternate uniforms now that say Sox across the front and say Sox up here. The old Expos uniforms, not the pinstripe, but the ones before that. I had Pirates down. The pinstripe Brewers uniforms, the old school ones are sick. And then one other worth mentioning for me is the blue, the light blue old Phillies uniform. Well, the light blue, one of them was light blue and one of them was home, but with the big P on the chest. I thought were really cool. But I love the old uniforms. When I play MLB The Show, most often the Mariners are in the current uniform, but I'll put the opposition in my favorite uniform from that's offered to me on the game.
Yeah.
So like the Angels is the 75 Angels. And it reminds me of, not that they played in 75, but I think of like Bobby Grich and Bobby Downing or Brian Downing and Devon White and Donnie Moore and Doug DeCinces, and all these like memories come back when I see those uniforms, which to me is really, really fun.
That's sweet. It's just embarrassing to admit, the other day I was watching the Brewers and they did a close up of a batter and they had I think it was McCutcheon, they had like the ball emblem on his shoulder.
Yeah.
And I never realized it. And I don't know if it was just an HD or whatever. It's actually like the
MB,
the barley is the seams on the baseball. I'm like,
yeah.
I've never noticed that before.
Yeah. The other crazy thing about the Brewers is that the mitt, the old mitt logo is actually an MB for Milwaukee Brewer.
Really?
Yeah. If you look at it closely, it's actually written in an M and a B.
Huh.
So yeah, it's just, I don't know. I love nerding out on uniform stuff. I could go down every uniform and talk about, whether I liked it or not. The old Giants uniforms with Kevin Mitchell and Will Clark and Matt Williams, I loved. I think a lot of it though is they just remind you they help you to reminisce or remind you, the old school ones do, of players that you loved. And to me, I think that's a part of the fun of it.
Cool.
Also 90s Reds uniforms as well. It's another one. Yeah, the cards. What do you got?
All right. So I turned off the fuzziness on my camera, so hopefully
Cool.
it stays in focus here.
Opening day tops.
Yeah.
Sweet. 7 cards in the pack.
Yes.
Let's go. That's our favorite. It's our favorite catcher in baseball, Will Smith. Yeah. Nice.
Have like a really shiny, nice finish. It's really nice cards. That's a nice card.
Mookie. Yeah. I hope he gets back to his kind of prime Mookie Betts.
We were just talking about the classic Dodger white uniforms. We had 2 cards.
Yep.
Wrong team now.
Nah. Nobody cares about him.
Oh, Klubat's with the Rays now.
Right? I miss Indian Klubat.
Now you were just talking about the old uniforms. This is very serendipitous.
Right? Nice card. Robert, huh? Old Lou Bob.
Is
I
that the
wonder,
uniform?
I wonder if that's worth anything.
Is that the uniform you were talking about?
It is.
That's
It is.
awesome.
I love that uniform.
We have to get a picture in there because this is a primarily, it feels like a pitching podcast.
Wainwright,
Yep. I don't
boring,
particularly-
but really good.
Yeah, I was gonna say but that's a cool looking card too. 10 minutes wind up like that. And then we got a special card. Looks like opening day. It's like in the snow last year when Miggy hit that home run.
Yeah, nice.
No. Says the annual street ride parties return to downtown Detroit, celebrate 2020 on opening day, which featured the Tigers hosting Cleveland. With snow falling at Comerica, Miguel Cabrera hit a first home run of the season for any team, a 2-run opposite field shot that keyed a 3-2 win.
Nice.
Cool card. Some nice cards, man. That Mookie card and that Robert card are really nice.
The Robert card's dope.
Yeah, that's neat looking. The bat and the way the bat's like suspended in the air.
He's
That's
a
good.
hard one for me to I did not expect him to be great, and he looks like he's great. Looks like I was wrong.
Gotta stay on the field.
That's right.
man.
That's right. You got anything else?
Nope. Enjoy Dodgers.
Yeah,
Giants.
Rodon, Urias. It's
What
gonna be
time does that
awesome.
game start?
7, I think, or 6:40 maybe.
Shoot.
Like I said, I'll watch it. I'll watch the recorded version, but that's okay with me.
All right.
So reconvene on Saturday, do a couple pitch or player deep dives.
Okay.
Oh, sounds good. It's good to
All
see you, man.
Good to talk to you.
Likewise.